All right, we're gonna talk some boxing today. First and foremost, peace. Um, let's talk about the let's talk about boxing today, right? And how it was in the '60s. I would even say I would go back and adventure and go back to the 1900s when the people that predominantly ruled boxing, I would say around the 1900s or the 1800s, was Caucasians. And it wasn't because that they were the best fighters. I believe that they predominantly ruled is because I believe that they predominantly ruled is because of race. But when Jack Johnson finally got his opportunity, even though when he got his opportunity, he had to sign a contract to give his purse away to the reigning heavyweight champion uh of the world. Not his purse, but like he had to give certain amount of his money for the for over 10 years or something like that to this guy that was the champion, unless he was not going to give him a shot. So he had to sacrifice a whole lot just to become the heavyweight champion of the world. And see, in the 1900s and things of this nature, they fought 33 rounds. See, they fought 33 rounds, and that's a that's in other words, they're fighting until what to the last man drop. I can't imagine fighters today fighting 33 rounds. This is how low boxing has failed as a sport. I can't even imagine guys today fighting 15 rounds. This is how low boxing has failed as a sport. And the reason why it has failed as a sport is because the fighters today does not want to get in there and mix it up with quality competition. We have new terms in boxing that they use today. They say we're not fighting unless it makes sense. These are some of the terms that's used today. We're not fighting unless it makes boxing sense. This is why people like Floyd Mayweather Jr., Tank Davis, and a slew of other fighters can openly duck fighters and they don't really get criticized for it. It's because the way that boxing has been promoted and the way that it has been introduced to the world today. See, I remember when I was a kid, I think, Wilfredo Gomez fight against Salvador Sanchez. They was two of the top featherweights in the game. They fought against each other, and it wasn't a bunch of moving around and people weren't talking about he fight good off the back foot and he throws sharp combinations and see people just want to come see a fight. Now, was those guys talented? Of course they was. Rest in peace to Salvador Sanchez because he was a very talented fighter during his time. And it's very unfortunate that he died at a young age in a car accident. And I think the man had over 40 something fights. See, back then they fought. And uh, to his credit, was Salvador Sanchez in there with a killer in all his 40 fights? No, he wasn't. But the fights that made sense for his legacy to be remembered as a great fighter. He hadn't even retired yet. You know what I'm saying? He hadn't even retired. His career was cut short because of an unfortunate accident that happened to him where he lost his life. You know what I mean? But I saw when he fought against Rafael Gomez, and you know he destroyed Rafael Gomez. See, that was back in the time when fighters had something to prove. See, they had something to prove. They had to because they knew their legacy was on the line, and they had to get in there and face the best quality opponents. Sugar Ray Leonard, when he came out the Olympics, see, he was the golden boy before Oscar De La Hoya, and Sugar Ray Leonard was a very good fighter, but he got criticized a lot because a lot of people was thinking that Sugar Ray Leonard, his career was being they was thinking that his career was being handled with care. See, so they turned around and put him in there with Roberto Duran. You know, they thought that Roberto Duran was done with and stuff like that. And Roberto Duran, he shocked the world. See, he beat a young up and coming fighter by the name of Sugar Ray Leonard. He beat him fair and square. You know what I mean? But in that fight, Sugar Ray Leonard showed a lot of heart. See, he didn't run from Roberto Duran. He stayed in the pocket and he fought against Roberto Duran. Roberto Duran ended up beating him, right? On beating him by unanimous decision. But they ended up fighting again, and because they knew that Roberto Duran wasn't really disciplined as a fighter, they fought, I guess, like a couple of months later, and Sugar Ray Leonard beat him, you know. And Sugar Ray Leonard did a lot of boxing and holding and moving out the way. So Roberto Duran he got frustrated and he quit it. You know what I'm saying? Because he didn't have the speed, and the reason why he didn't have the speed and things of this nature is because he was not in shape. See, but that's not Ray's fault. That's his fault. But even still, I think him and Ray fought 3 times. You know what I'm saying? Ray went on and fought against Tommy Hearns. Tommy Hearns was considered the killer at 147 pounds. Do you think that Sugar Ray Leonard was scared when when that fight was signed, or when people was telling him that he had to fight this guy? Of course he was, because that's a human emotion. But he manned up and they made the fight. These two guys fought at the prime of their career. See, it wasn't no it gotta make boxing sense. It wasn't no all this red tape going on. Even though the fight was supposed to happen, I think two years prior to when they fought, but they still fought at a young age. Both of those guys in their 20s. They was young. They was young adults. You know what I'm saying? And they fought against each other. The best fought against the best. Now I understand why fighters deal with the business aspect of fighting today, is because when we talk about fighting back then, the promoter was making the most money. So like now, because of Floyd Mayweather, and not just Floyd Mayweather, you had a lot of fighters. Like Sugar Ray Leonard was making $1 million as a fighter when he came out the Olympics. You know what I'm saying? I think 100,000 or $1 million. See, back then that was considered a lot of money. So he was already making a lot of money when he came out of the Olympics. And you had a lot of other fighters. We can go back to Mike Tyson and stuff like that because the cost of living was different from the cost of living that we live in today. Not so much the cost of living, the currency was different. The dollar range. See, back then, when I was growing up in the 80s, $5 can take you a long way. I never really realized that until I got older. When I was a young kid, $5 could last you as a kid. $5 can last you for a whole week. That's how the economy was. So imagine a person having 30,000, 50,000, or $100,000 in 1987. That's a lot of money. But I understand why the fighters try to make the business sense is because the promoter gets majority of the money, and promoters are needed, but the fighters should get the most money is because they're the ones that's doing the bulk of the work. See, they doing it because they're putting their life on the line. But even though the fighters should be getting majority of the purse from the promoters, the fighters today, they're not fighting the best fighters. We look at people like Tank Davis. Now, people that heard me talk about Tank Davis, they know how I feel about Tank Davis. I think Tank Davis is a phenomenal athlete. He got speed. He can move the ring. You know, he got good foot movement. He's a devastating puncher. He knows how to slip punches. He got great hand speed. He can fight going backwards. He can fight going forward. Anything that you ask about a fighter, he can do that. But the problem with Tank Davis is trying a blueprint that a lot of people is not criticizing him for. What is the blueprint? He actually thinks that he's going to continue to make millions of dollars and he don't have to face the best quality opponents. And you know something, the way boxing is being introduced today, he may end up doing that. He may end up retiring from boxing without ever facing an A-level fighter. And that's not good for his legacy. It's because you're in the sport of boxing to break records. You're in the sport of boxing to win titles. You're in the sport of boxing to become the best boxer that ever that ever put on the gloves. See, when you're done boxing, they're not going to rate you by how much money that you're making. You're going to be rated by the quality of opponents that you're facing. And that has always been the criteria of sports. Whether it's football, basketball, I don't care if it's ice hockey. You're you're judged about you're judged by the quality of opponents that you're facing. That has always been the criteria. So when we looking at boxing, we see a lot of these fighters today that are great fighters. They're talented. They can do a lot of things, but they're not testing themselves. And a lot of that has to do with promotions, and a lot of that has to do with them not being confident in themselves. A lot of them are not confident in themselves. They're not confident that they can go. Tank Davis may not be confident that he can go in and fight against a guy like Devin Haney or Lomachenko and get the job done. Or if he moves up to 140 pounds, he faced Josh Taylor. He's not confident that he can go in there and get the job done against Teofimo Lopez. So what happens? You have the promotional team. They're going to what? They're going to fix his fights against fighters that are good fighters, but it's a 90% chance that he's coming out of the fight unscathed. And these are the fights that they're giving us today. Let's look at uh, Jamal Charlo. Jamal Charlo is a talented fighter, but Jamal Charlo is a perfect example of what I'm saying about an individual that don't have confidence in himself. He's not confident that he can go against uh, Demetrius Andrade or the best fighters at the 160-pound division, 168-pound division, and get the job done. So what's going on? PBC is handling his career with care. And another thing that PBC and a lot of these other boxing networks is doing, what are they doing? They're strategically giving the fight fans fights that we don't even really want to see. Why are they doing it? Because of money. They don't care about legacy. They care about the dollar. Floyd Mayweather said it himself. We're prize fighters. We don't care about legacy no more. This is why he never unified the 140-pound division. He never unified the 147-pound division in his career. All these guys set up here with these belts. He never went and collect those belts. He held on to the 147-pound WBC title until pretty much his career was over with. He never unified, even when he was at the lower weights. So that says something about his career. But everybody talks about the money team and how much money he made. See, but your career is not judged upon that. See, when we look at his career, Floyd Mayweather Jr. has never been in the ring with an A-level fighter. When he fought all those fighters, man, a lot of those fighters were on the downside of their career. Or they had a chink in their armor. They wasn't the best of the best. And it don't always have to be that you're undefeated just to be the best of the best. Marvin Hagler, when he finally won that title, when he went over there to Europe, I think he had already lost 2 fights, you know. So we're not talking about zero. We're talking about the quality of opponent. I mean, the quality of a fighter that you are as an individual. Floyd Mayweather Jr. has never faced an A-level competition fighter. This is why I don't have him as an all-time great. He's a great fighter. You know what I'm saying? He's a he's a remarkable great fighter, but he's not an all-time great fighter in my book. And whoever don't like that, who gives a damn? See, but let's go back to the 80s, for instance, even the 90s. When Evander Holyfield fought against Riddick Bowe. All 3 fights was legendary. They went toe to toe. And they made millions of dollars. Now the reason why Holyfield probably had money issues and stuff, that had nothing to do with the promoter, is him. You know, it's him not managing his money right. And he'll tell you that himself, you know. But Holyfield is judged upon the quality of opponents he has faced. He faced the top contenders. He fought against some of the best champions. The man is a 4 division. I mean, he's a 2 two-division world champion, cruiserweight, heavyweight, four-time heavyweight champion. In my opinion, Holyfield should be ranked really number one. Is because he won the title four times and he faced just as much quality opponents as Muhammad Ali. You know what I'm saying? And Muhammad Ali fought everybody, all comers. Evander Holyfield did the same thing. And see, like a lot of those fighters that had a bruising career, a lot of times they had to retire early. You know what I'm saying? Because they was all fight they man when they was like in their 30s and stuff like that, 35, 36, man, they was done because they fought hard back then. They fought. It wasn't no, you know, all this ballet dancing that these fighters doing today. It was none of that. Them boys threw hands back in the day. They threw hands. And this is why those fighters back then are still considered the great fighters today, is because they fought hard fights. These guys today, they not fighting hard fights, man. Tank Davis wants to get paid all the millions of dollars, but he has never faced a A-level fighter. If I was a promoter, and if I was a promoter and I was promoting him, if if I decide to put him in there with a top level fighter and he doesn't want to do it, I would get rid of him. Or if he comes to me and say he wants to get paid millions of dollars and stuff like that, I will point that out to him. Man, look here, you ain't fought nobody. Let's be real. You ain't fought nobody. This is why I have a lot of respect for Terrence Bud Crawford because Bud Crawford is a different type of animal. See, he's the fighter of the old times. He wants to test himself against the great fighters, even if he lose. You know what I'm saying? He want to go in there and fight against the best fighters. But a lot of these fans, they have an issue with this man. The man come to work every day. He the first one there, the last one to leave. You never really hear about Terrence Bud Crawford in the media and stuff like that. And you don't even have the support of the American country to support this guy in all his endeavors. But we would support somebody like Errol Spence, even though Errol Spence is a talent too. You know what I'm saying? He may be one dimensional, but what he does, shoot, he get in that ring, a lot of people ain't been able to whoop this guy. But see, Terrence Bud Crawford want to be able to go fight this guy. You know this guy ducked him for over 3 years? That says something about his pedigree. See, they talk all this nonsense that they want to. Terrence Bud Crawford is the most he man, look, that man is a threat to the 147-pound division and the 154-pound division. He ain't even moved up there yet. Jamel Charlo don't even want to fight him because he's a fighter of old, and Jamel Charlo is a fighter of old too. He's a fighter of old, but Jamel Charlo ain't really been in there with a fighter that is basically on the same level. I like Castanos. Castanos was good. But if we're going to say that, are we really going to say that Castanos is an A level fighter? I would say Castanos is a B level fighter at best. So the downfall of the Latin and the black fighter is due to the fact that the Latin and the black fighter does not want to take chances anymore. They don't want to get bruised up no more. Now you got fighters, black and Latin fighters that still have that same spirit. Gilberto Ramirez. See, he's a fighter of old. And now what's happening is you see a lot of Caucasian fighters, they have taken on that old warrior spirit. Look at Beterbiev. But Beterbiev has 100% knockout ratio. And he ain't scared to get in there with nobody. Win, lose, or draw. You're gonna have to beat him in order to beat him. A lot of us black fighters, we stay on Instagram, we talk too much. See? We always showing our gold chains and all this type of stuff, but when it's time to get in there and perform, we're performing against low quality opponents, man. Same thing for the Latin fighter. So in my conclusion, the black fighter and the Latin fighter is really, they're really becoming an extinction in boxing is because they don't want to really get in there and mix it up with top quality opponents. So with that being said, peace.